I'm working in the New Perspectives Microsoft Access 2010 textbook. I'm on page 146 and I'm going to create a calculated field. Traditionally, we've created calculated fields in queries, forms, and reports. In Access 2010, we can create a calculated field in a table. You probably remember that from early on in creating the tables with the data type of calculated appearing. I'm going to caution you now not to create a calculated field in a table until you know exactly how your database is going to be used. With that said, let's move on and create our new query by going into Query Design. We're going to use the contract and invoice tables. And the fields that I want are contract num, contract amount, invoice item, invoice paid, and invoice amount. And let's just run it to see what we come up with. I have 172 records. I'm going to go ahead and save that query. I'm going to save it as unpaid invoices with late fees. And let's just double check. How many records in the invoice table? 172. Okay, so we're on track for now. Let's go ahead and go back. Now we've been asked to apply this particular calculation to only those records where the invoice is not paid. And so the invoice paid is a yes/no field. As a yes/no field, it will take several different values. I can put in yes, I can put in no, I can put in true, I can put in false, I can put in 0, and I can put in -1. So let's just take a real quick look to see how that works. I'm going to type in no, and I'm not going to capitalize it. And I'm going to move down off that row. Access recognized that criteria. Let's run it, and I should see that all of my invoice paid check marks are blank. Let's just turn it the other way and look at yes. Now they should all have a value in them, or check mark, and they do. And we'll try false. That one worked. What about F? Oops. Doesn't get F. See how it puts it in quotation marks? That means it doesn't recognize it. It got false, but it didn't get F. Let's try true. And it must be spelled right. And again, I'm going to use a lowercase just to see how it works. There, it recognized it. Should see check marks. We do. And then the last one I talked about, 0. Everybody's pretty familiar with 0. 0 being off. And when I come back, it's changed it to false. And -1 changes it to true. So those values will work. In Access, instead of 1 being yes and 0 being no, in Access, 0 is no, but -1 is yes. So let's change this back to no, because we want no in that particular criteria. That leaves us with 100 records. Now keep in mind that what we're doing here is we're simply hiding those values that we don't want to show this calculation on. The calculation is still being performed on them. We're just hiding the yes values. Now we're being asked to create a calculated field. We can use the expression builder, we can use the zoom box, and we can also type directly in the cell. The book goes through a discussion of how to use the expression builder, so I'm going to use the zoom box. So I'm going to right click and zoom. The zoom box opens. And for those of you that do this in front of a group of people and you want to increase the font size so people can see, I can up my font size to 16. And as I key in my calculation here, everybody will be able to see it. I'm going to start by naming my field. Now technically, I should name my field late fee no space. But the book does specifically say late fee with a space, so I'll go ahead and name it that way. If you're using the expression builder, do not start with the name of the field. Just simply type in the expression. Because if you're using the expression builder and you type in the name of the field, then the expression builder will start throwing in some things that you might not be prepared for. If we have time, we'll take a quick look at that. And the next thing I want to write in here is invoice amount. And in order to make sure, when you're using the zoom box, you need to make sure that you're spelling things correctly. So I want to be able to see my field name right here as I work in this. So I can type it exactly. That wasn't exactly, was it? Invoice amount, exactly as I see it, times 0.03. Now, is spacing important? You see I put a space here, but I didn't put one here. Let's find out if it's important. So click OK. It entered the value into that column. I'm going to move off that row. Now, if Access didn't like what I typed in, it would do a couple of things. First thing, it would just plain disappear. You know, whatever you typed in there is just now gone. Now, if that happens to you on a regular basis, you're typing something in and you look back and the value, the calculation just plain gone, it's a sure clue that you're doing something wrong and Access just doesn't like it. And rather than tell you what it doesn't like about it, it just wipes the whole thing out. So sometimes it will just wipe out your entry entirely. Sometimes it will give you an error. Let me try running it to see how it works. And mine's working. My late fee is working. But is it really? There's a value there. Is 3% of $10,300. Get your calculator out if you don't know. When you perform a calculation, even if you think you do it right, you should look at your values and go, does this make sense? Pick a value that you know you can work with. 10,000, and we want 3%, so we're going to basically times it by 3. So I've got 30,000, and then move the decimal places 2 places, and that gives me $300. So no matter how you do the math in your head or whatever, do it, and make sure it makes sense. Now, I said that I would come back and take a look at this using the expression builder. So I'll just go into the next column and I'll click on Builder. And I said if I started to type in late fee and then started adding the fields, this is what I was talking about. It will add placeholders. So if you're going to type in the name of the field first, you're going to have to go in and you're going to have to delete those placeholders. If you simply put in the value without naming the field first, you won't have that same problem. I like to name the field first, but now I can just come back and add the field name in right here. I'm going to take that field out because I already have my late fee in. We'll run it. It's working. And I'll go back, and now I'm going to set up my properties for that field. And I've been asked to change it to format currency. Now, when you format for currency, the decimal places are automatically 2 places. However, sometimes the book will ask you to purposely put in 2 decimal places. This time it doesn't. But if you're formatting for currency, the decimal places is automatically 2%. So let's take a look at it. It's working. Now, the next thing we need to look at here, we're going to move on and we're going to look at aggregate queries in just a moment. But this calculation is a calculated field that acts on each record individually. I'm running a calculation for this record, and then the next record, and then the next record. When we get into aggregated functions, as we're going to see in the next section, those are going to act on groups of records. So if I want to do a calculation of a particular record, I'm just going to write a calculated field, and I'm not going to do anything with this totals icon up here. Make sure you do not see totals in your listing of row headings.